Okay, do you got a notification again?
Yep, I see it.
Okay, perfect. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of One Plus One, your place for inconvenient truth telling and myth busting, and we are rejoined by Aidan Jonah, who is the founder and the editor in chief of the Canada Files, a brilliant online website devoted to exposing Canadian imperialism. So, Aidan, thank you so much for coming back on the program.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to be back on here. It's always nice to chat with you.
Likewise, it's a real honor to have you back. And so, Aidan, before we talk about some of the current stories that the Canada Files is covering, and some of the future topics that you guys are going to be visiting frequently throughout throughout 2021, I had to ask this question, which is a bit. Yeah, I have to ask this question. I was looking at my friend Jay Watts, past guest on the show, the central organizer of the Communist Party of Canada, and so and what's this that apparently Nikki Ashton, who's one of the more sincerely left wing members of Parliament of the NDP. She's more anti-war than the average NDPer, and is very much a socialist reformer at home. What's this I heard that she got punished by the leader of the NDP, Jagmeet Singh, because she went abroad because because of a family crisis and all this stuff, and there's a huge outrage that Jagmeet Singh would do this to Nikki Ashton. Like, what's this story about?
Oh man, it's a tough one there. Basically, the essence of it, in the sense I've always gotten, was that basically this was a case. Essentially, it was her dying grandmother, I believe. She was going to visit her in Greece, and I think she had gotten essentially the requirements. She had gotten permission from the Greek government to go. Basically, she got an exemption to visit the grandmother, which basically she got the exemption, so it wasn't exactly like she was sneaking off and going to Hawaii, right? Where a
Exactly.
lot of the other figures were basically. But essentially, what it said is that basically she didn't tell basically the NDP about this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I gotta be real here. I have very severe doubts about that. I feel like they likely just kept it under the table, and then basically when it came out, they just used it as a tool to just punish the left. Really, that's the way I personally see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, I think basically there's definitely it's a tough one because people can't go around, can't visit, but also it's not easy because well, eh,
Hey,
it's a
if
tough one.
yeah. I mean, it is a tough one because on the one hand, I mean, I don't know anyone personally who's in a similar situation. Heaven forbid anyone ever finds themselves in a similar situation. But if the person managed to get permission from whatever said government that says yes, come come visit your dying relative, or come visit your relative that's that's in desperate need of your presence, then yeah, I mean it's yeah, it is a tough one, but I think I kind of lean more towards this is the NDP establishment using this just to you know uh, have what little control or influence the more left wing, sincerely left wing people have over the party, which is also ridiculous in and of itself because Nikki Ashton has shown herself to be a loyal NDPer who supported the bombing of, who supported the war for oil in Libya twice. But yeah.
Yeah, no. It's still basically to me is like Yeah, she's definitely not perfect in terms of she's supported imperialism in certain cases. But yeah, I think there's no doubt she is like the way you'd put it is kind of like best of the worst.
Exactly.
One of the best of the worst. That's the way I'd say it is like the kind of the decent ones are they're not great, but they're also I say it. I mean, I saw one MPP basically seemingly retweeting a Gray Zone interview, which was interesting. But yeah, I haven't been wildly impressed other than that. So
Oh, that's interesting, and that guy better watch out because if he keeps retweeting very credible independent news outlets and anti-imperialist outlets, he too will probably lose, the ability to vote on, whatever subjects.
yeah.
but uh, but yeah, but all right. Anyways, all right. So back to yeah. So on to the issue at hand, which is what is the Canada files going to be covering in 2021. Are there any particular stories you would like to tell? My small audience that they should check out at the Canada files. What are some of the stories that you guys that you and your team have been breaking, which the Canadian anti-imperialist audience should be checking out?
Yeah, it's tough to exactly say what we're gonna be looking into for sure right now, but I'd say I can see the Cold War, the kind of Cold War with China, is probably gonna be one of the major focuses in Canada's role on that front. Yeah, I'm a lot of it really is reliant on what happens to, which is probably not the sexiest answer per se, but I don't know if I'm able to jump the gun as much there. So yeah, I
So
think
so
Cold
so
War
so
is
so
probably a guaranteed one. So
so you think 2021 it's going to be unfortunately, you think that that this pivot to Asia, this very dangerous game of chicken playing with fire with China is going to get increasingly worse and worse.
yeah, that would be my sense realistically. So I unfortunately don't have faith in the fact I think basically there's going to be some real conflict there. There's a real risk of that personally.
Oh, that's oh that I mean that I mean that's I mean I have to say I completely agree with you. We already got very disturbing red flags that was happening last year with the anti China derangement syndrome and the rabid xenophobia that seems to be taking over all the political parties, and it's very very distressing to see lots of the supposedly left leaning parties also jumping the shark on this. I think the Green Party debates that the Canadian Foreign Policy Institute hosted, where Dimitri Lascaris was without a question the best out of all of the A candidates on all issues related to war and peace. It was very disturbing to see so many of the Green Party candidates advocating the pivot to Asia, advocating war with China, literally advocating a war with China and saying that like China is a threat, that they need to be contained, and that we have to look into sanctions and militarism, and which is so mind baffling because how because again, as I've talked about this with many of my guests on the show, you cannot be an environmentalist, let alone an eco-socialist, and be advocating any form of militarism and imperialism. And it was just so shocking to see so much of the anti China hysteria, and we haven't even gotten into the anti Russia hysteria, and to see so many left-leaning parties and left-leaning outlets jumping the shark on this is really, it's just very wow, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it definitely is. Basically concerning. Yeah, I'm kind of curious. What else have you been reading recently?
Well, because I was very busy with my family during the Christmas holidays, I actually, I actually wasn't reading so much of, what's happening in the state of affairs. But I know that, well, I mean, I can talk. I can certainly give my my thoughts on the the crazy shit that's happening in the U.S. right now. But
Oh
actually,
yeah, I was actually on a live stream last night with Christo Evelise and yeah, and there was a Shelby, Lefty Mind on Twitter. That was a really a topic of discussion for a few hours. So
well,
yeah,
that's
it's just wild what happened there, really.
because we focus on because we're focusing on on Canadian on Canadian related topics, I'll just say the following thing about what took place last year, were Trump's far right movement, his far right base, call them average Republicans, call them QAnon supporters and whatnot. I'll just say the following about this. I have the very unpopular opinion on the left that I mean, personally, I think that Joe Biden kinda did cheat in order to win at the last election, because the guy, because think about it. Trump managed to beat the deep states, and those stupid investigations into Russian collusion in the 2016 elections was completely discredited. Mueller didn't find any. Mueller basically exonerated Trump. There was there was no collusion, even though they're still saying that the Russians tried to influence the election. And that automatically should have meant that Trump, would win, in a landslide, or at least win with a comfortable majority. Then you had this ridiculous effort to impeach Donald Trump just because he told the democratically elected leader of Ukraine, Zelensky, unlike Poroshenko, who was a NATO, EU, Western puppet, and an rival oligarch that the West, felt that they could rely on. Trump told Zelensky, hey, before I start giving you weapons again, you should look into Joe Biden and his son Hunter, because they're basically war profiteers. And then they tried to impeach Trump for that, even though if anyone should have been impeached or disqualified from running for office, it should have been Joe Biden and his war profiteering in Ukraine. And I haven't even gotten started on Joe Biden's, endless, bloody laundry list of, imperialism when he was VP under Obama, and his whole, record, in the Senate. So and then so you put those two things together, which meant that Trump's base were definitely going to come out in huge numbers to vote for dear leader and give the Democrats another black eye. And the media and the deep state was clearly on the side of Joe Biden. They were heavily biased in favor of Joe Biden. And then Whitney Webb, former star muckraker of Min Press News, who now writes for The Last American Vagabond and does her own independent news project called Unlimited Hangout. She did a story about how the deep state, how these neocons, these anti-Trump neocons, and these pro-Biden, Obama, Clinton type of people were basically working out a huge conspiracy to basically steal the election from Trump, and create a lot of chaos scenarios.
I gotta be honest.
Yeah,
In
go
this
ahead.
case, basically, I just think in terms of like, look, if there's no pandemic and then Trump lost, maybe I think there might be some grounds to that because I think there's no way in hell Trump would get beaten by anyone other than Sanders. Basically, if
Or even
he
Tulsi
didn't
Gabbard.
have to contend with COVID. But I mean, even if there's like I think there's an article in the Canada Files about Dominion voting and whatever. Some of those machines are suspect, but I don't think they're used everywhere. And then I just don't think basically it was. I don't think it was rigged. I think we can hate the deep state as much as we want, but I don't think basically this was really rigged because I mean look at the end of the day like Biden and Trump are still remarkably similar policy wise at the end of the day, so it's not something like where like they absolutely needed Biden. Like the deep state would have collapsed if Trump had won again. Like the deep state was not gonna collapse if Trump won again. So
Yeah.
like so that's the thing for me is I think there's no doubt that basically like there's a lot. I think there's reasons to doubt the legitimacy of some of the elections in the states. I don't doubt that. I've seen on like the
Hey,
local levels.
you had states that that for decades since the Reagan times, and even when Clinton made the Democrats much more of a right wing party than it already was. That all of a sudden they turned blue overnight, and
I
okay,
just think that's COVID. I just think it's
okay,
incompetent COVID handling. Because I think basically there's some independent journalists, not like the right wing ones. What was her name? I'm trying to remember. Her name. Basically, it's Convo Couch. It's Fiora Isabel.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
some
yeah, yeah, yeah,
questions in
yeah.
terms of like LA. Like LA, there's actually some like you probably have grounds for like talking about concerns around elections and legitimacy around that there. Basically, like I think California is like the best example. You aren't going to magically have everything be okay just because you have Democrat hegemony really.
Exactly.
So, but I think that's one of the kind of local. Maybe there's some questions, but even then, I wouldn't say there's any proof of any definitive fraud. I mean, at the end of the day, basically, even though Orwell's kind of I think it was Orwell, but even though Orwell is obviously a snitch and anti-communist, he did have one good point. Was it him? I'm totally messing up the name of the person. Point being, the quote was basically, if they let you vote, then it doesn't really matter. That's the essence of it, right? So
Yeah,
basically,
yeah.
the same people, the same businesses, the same basically corporations are going to be in control of society. So I
Yeah,
just see
exactly.
basically,
And
yeah.
for me, if for me, if Trump won, or if he cheated in order to win, it's gonna be it's gonna be shit for humanity. If Joe Biden wins, or if he cheated in order to win, it's gonna be shit for humanity, because in the end of the day, like you said, these are two rival oligarch parties. These are two rival imperialists. These are two rival arch racists. Both of them are not going to give single payer health care. Both of them are never going to give UBI to people. Both of them are not going to do diddly squat to end, indigenous American poverty. And both of them are going to, have a war with, China, or like a new Cold War with China. And it's just, as the great Frank Zappa said, it is literally like, the torture, never stops.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, no doubt there. Yeah, it's definitely questionable there. But
sort of, so that was, that was sort of one of the only major things I've been following recently. And then the other thing I'll say about that before we talk about what's happening in Canada, is that is it's it's a pretty messed up situation, because obviously Trump has, like, a very, very motivated movement behind him. These are people that literally will take a bullet for him. And the fact that like it was so easy for them to like storm the barricades, and if the if a left-wing people power movement had done the equivalent of what Trump's cult followers did, revolution, that's people power uprising would have been flattened in no time, as we saw with the George Floyd solidarity protests. And so that I find very frightening. But that said, I'm not in favor of suspending Trump's Twitter. I'm not in favor of banning Gavin McInnes from Twitter and stuff like that, because yeah, it may seem cute and fun that that you ban all these right-wing talking heads, and that you get rid of Fox News and all of those guys from Twitter and Facebook. But as we know from the anti-Russia conspiracy theories, first they take out a repugnant person, and then they start going after people who do real journalism in the left. And you only have to ask our comrades from Press TV, Telesur, RT, and countless other people, how about the whole Silicon Valley, censorship that goes on when people do that stupid thing of yeah, censor Trump, hooray, censor Trump, but no, don't censor. Okay, too late, censored. Any reflections on that?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting one there. Basically, oh, there we go. Okay, yeah. So the way I see it there is that I think basically, especially Trump did incite violence, and I think there definitely is grounds for him basically being booted off the platform. But as I said earlier, basically there's a bigger question of, in my opinion, you realistically have the big problem of a corporation, basically of corporations controlling the public square, which is just inherently broken in the first place. Mm-hmm. There's the second issue of basically this doesn't just magically make the movement disappear. Basically, yeah, you banned orange hair bad man off of basically of some social media channels, but the power is it's still there. And I just see a lot of the chaos and these calls of basically calling it terrorism rather than an exercise of white supremacy as basically the kind of the push for a Patriot Act 2.0 and a severe repression of the online left. I actually have a pitch that I'm waiting for a response for it on a read passage. If not, I'll fire it off elsewhere. But I have concerns on what the implications are for the Canadian left. Basically, because I see as a lot of people are. I think basically some people are kind of getting that urgency of the situation, but I also think some people just flat out aren't, and so it's kind of a pretty, in my opinion, is a pretty dangerous situation there.
I completely agree with you, and that's a perfect segue to Canada, because many people in America may not know this, but the founder of the Proud Boys is a Canadian.
Yep.
Gavin McInnes, and for anyone who's been living under a rock, or simply doesn't follow all these different movements very closely, Gavin McInnes was the co-founder of Vice, which is one of the biggest media conglomerates. It usually targets millennials, and it's kind of a pseudo-left liberal outlet run by Shane Smith, who's very who's very much an Obama apologist, very 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 Clinton friendly, very Joe Biden friendly, and advocates wars for oil in Venezuela, Nicaragua, supports non-existent moderate rebels in Syria and Libya. and completely, whitewashes, Savboda and the right sector and all of those neo-Nazi militias and anti-Russian militias in Ukraine. And Gavin McInnes was the co-founder of Vice. And Gavin McInnes, in case people don't know him, he's like, I mean, to call him a right-wing shock jock would be an understatement. He's definitely part of the Canadian and at large the global, reactionary right-wing movement. Call them alt-right, call them, whatever the hell you want. And he, for a long time, was a correspondent on Rebel Media, which and to sum up Rebel Media is basically the far right version of the Young Turks network, except they deny that climate change exists, and they're and instead of saints and they're very anti-Idle No More, very anti-Black Black Lives Matter, very pro Israel. They certainly believe in uniting the right. And Ezra Levant, the editor in chief, he definitely supports the more far right elements of the Conservative Party of Canada. Although now he's been playing footsie with Maxime Bernier's People's Party of Canada. So just have to mention that.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting there. Yeah, I think basically you definitely do like the Proud Boys. That's definitely an extremely dangerous group. There's an interesting Sri Prakdar column around basically that. I don't think it was specifically the danger. I think Proud Boys, you probably do have a case for basically banning them because
they engage in violence.
Yeah,
they explicitly do engage in violence.
I guess it's just the terrorism. My only worry there is yet again it's potential repression of the left. That's my overarching main concern really. I think you need to basically in a sense repress the left. The right, not the left, for God's sakes. You need to repress the right. You do, because they're dangerous and they actually are gonna cause physical harm. They're gonna commit basically violent acts. But I think at the same time, I really think it has to be a balance. You have to be cautious, and basically not just 100% support. Basically, the way I put it, you can tell I'm extremely conflicted on this. Exactly. But I think it's good in the end of the day that they are being cracked down upon. I just think there has to be a hypervigilance around basically making sure this doesn't happen even worse to the left, because you already see censorship happening against the left before this. We can't just pretend basically that repression against the left is just going to start now. It's been happening for years. It's been happening for years, quite frankly. So yeah, no, I think basically the party band, let's be real here, they are basically a dangerous group, quite frankly. Yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on it.
Well, I mean, but my worries is again, and this is what's so effing frustrating with with 4 years of Trump derangement, with Trump derangement syndrome and Putin Russia derangement syndrome, is that like you mentioned, it's nice and cute when you suppress or deplatform an Alex Jones or a Milo Yiannopoulos, a Steve Bannon, or Donald Trump. But at the end of the day, I mean, come on, Donald Trump is president of the United States. The military advocates violence all the time. The FBI advocates violence all the time. NATO, the EU, every head of state advocates and incites violence against either people who are protesting against them at home or order for imperialism abroad. And this whole stupid thing of we need to combat fake news. Well, if you're interested in it, if you want to shut down people because because they're COVID skeptics and whatnot. Okay, like I can sort of understand. I can sort of understand that, but at the end of the day, the biggest peddlers of fake news is the CBC, CNN, BBC, ABC, Australia, TVNZ, New Zealand, and all those outlets which sold the Iraq War, the Libya War, the non-existent moderate rebels in Syria, and and to paint Vladimir Putin as this as this all-wise evil boogeyman who's who's destabilizing the entire world. And then if they don't engage in full on fake news, they engage in half truths, and which is the most dangerous form of propaganda. So again, is Twitter going to ban Joe Biden when he says that we need to overthrow Assad because Assad's about to gas his own people again? Like, are people on the left going to be advocating for that?
Yep. I'm just gonna not. We're not gonna go into that. I don't think we'll go into that. But just read the gray zone. Just search up gray zone Assad attacks, and then you'll see the gray zone. They'll debunk that. But yeah, no, yeah, you do make a bigger point. Basically, by this logic, basically, and it's a totally fair point. Basically, every single like pretty much like U.S. politician and figures should be banned. Like basically, I think the biggest point, I guess, and this is a point that arrived to probably thanks to the conversation, is really that the only time violence matters is when it's directed towards an American institution. Like that's the only time when violence matters to the social media networks. Like basically, it goes outside of the country. What violence? What violence? like that's the thing. Basically, is that it's the way to put it is it's not wrong to ban Trump, but by this realistically you should be, quite frankly, if you're following up on the same logic, you should be banning Biden, you should be banning Kamala Harris, you should be banning Rubio, you should be banning Pelosi.
The Five Eyes Alliance, the Deep State, and so forth.
you could even ban AOC for supporting basically not standing up for Venezuela. That's violence. Like, if you think about it, so that's the thing is basically I think this should be applied. If it's going to be applied, it should be applied firmly, right?
Exactly.
That's what it really should be. Basically, if basically Trump and Biden were both suspended, then I'd be sharing this on, because then I think if you're banning those both, then you're basically actually seriously applying this. But right now, it's just more applying it because it's only because it's an American institution. That's when it actually matters to the company.
Yeah, and Trump is seen as a bad apple, just like the Koch brothers. The Koch brothers, Rupert Murdoch, yours truly in Canada. The national, the National Post and Rebel Media. They're considered like the bad apples, but like the golden, but like the Globe and Mail, Obama, Hillary Clinton, CNN, MSNBC. Those are the good apples. The Guardian, that's credible news, whereas it's Rupert Murdoch's The Sun and the Daily Mail. Those are considered the bad apples. And for me, you as a communist can definitely relate to this to the statement I'm about to make. I think we live in a rotten system. I don't think of them as good apples and bad apples. I think they're all rotten to the core, and I want a completely different system. I think we need to radically change the system, and that's basically that's ripping apart this discredited capitalist system, put it in the trash, and have a revolutionary people power socialist movement, and not just at home, in Europe and in North America, but across the world, because my compassion isn't just to fellow Westerners. It's it's solidarity for anyone who's under the boots of the imperial mobsters, which is the EU, Canada, NATO, Britain, New Zealand, Australia, America, and so forth.
Yeah. Funny you mentioned NATO. Actually, this is a weird connection, but there's this group, Social Housing Justice Network. I was actually at a rally of theirs today.
Yeah.
Basically just calling for more social housing, right? And one of the chants that popped in my head was "Down with NATO, build social housing." So that came to mind. The other one was "Defund the war machine, build social housing." So you get the theme, but that just came to mind when you mentioned that. That's kind of like, by the way, that's organized by Anna Jessup. So if there's any of comrades, people in Toronto, go check out Social Housing Justice Network. It's Sunday at 3 p.m. It's a decent enough group. It's not massive, but it's an
Yeah.
important cause. So.
And are they actually? And speaking of what, which, the organization that that you went to this protest, are they? So are they for? Are they advocates of anti-imperialism abroad, or is this one of the weird conundrums that we constantly face with the Western left, where they want to defund the police at home, but they're okay with the global police network abroad, which is the CIA, the military-industrial complex.
No, they're against the they're against the military-industrial complex. Now,
Okay,
they're not Western chauvinists.
Okay, perfect. And that's social justice. What?
Housing network.
Social justice housing network. Oh, perfect. I'm gonna make sure to check them out. And actually, and I have to ask, are there yes, this is one of the topics I did want to ask you about. I just remembered this. What's the latest going on with Canada and the whole fighter jets purchase? Has that been killed? Has it been voted on yet, or what's the latest going on with that?
I haven't heard anything on that front as of now. I know there was an article in Jacobin by Yvonne Glaire writing about how we're apparently going to be spending like $70 billion on a new bunch of frigates for our Navy, the Canadian Navy. So that's what I've heard of in terms of purchases, but I haven't heard like a tremendous amount in terms of you know other details around that. So.
Okay, interesting. Well, hopefully it gets defeated, and does it look like, for the time being, until until this COVID situation is finally vanquished, that there's not going to be any Canadian general election in sight, or what?
Sir, honestly, can you repeat that question again?
Yeah. So the question is, like, do you think there's going to be another general election in Canada, or do you think not until the COVID situation goes away?
Oh, election. Well, it seems like Trudeau's trying to force one. To be honest, that's
interesting.
I don't know. That's the sense I've gotten. He wants an election. That's the sound of it. But I mean, I hope not. I just don't think we should be having an election this year. Quite frankly, it's gonna get way worse.
Yeah.
Like there's
because
4,000 cases alone in Ontario. So right now, basically, it's an absolute mess in terms of Ontario, really. So you know, to me, when you basically it's just right now, it's not a great time to do an election or really anything of that sort at all. I just do not think we should be doing that.
Yeah, exactly. No, I completely agree with you. And in fact, while we're talking about all of these right-wing movements, it's in Canada, it's a pretty frightening situation that's happening, because on the one hand, Trudeau, who I'm currently reading the person you mentioned, Eve Engler's. I'm currently reading his latest book, House of Mirrors, Justin Trudeau's foreign policy, and when I, when you read that, and you read the Trudeau formula by Martin Lukács. It's just so stunning how Trudeau is the white Obama, and how the Liberal Party of Canada is literally like the entire right wing Democratic Party, and in many ways the Labour Party when it's under ghastly people like Harold Wilson and Tony Blair. And
Yeah,
it's funny
and then
because
basically like the Justice Democrats of the that's basically it's the Justice Democrats or as recent things have been proven, the Fraud Squad. If forced to vote and that whole deal, it's kind of a very similar thing there.
And what's so stunning about Trudeau is the NDP, even though the NDP are pseudo-left or the NDP is a diet liberal party, maybe not the members and people like the NDP Socialist Caucus. They're very sincere, they're very sincerely left, but the NDP is this diet liberal party. Then you got the Green Party, which is trying to be like a diet liberal and a diet NDP party, except for people like Dimitri Lascaris and Miriam, Haddad. And then you got so they attack the liberals from the left. The Conservative Party and the People's Party of Canada attacks the liberals from the right. Trudeau painted himself as this compassionate conservative, this compassionate liberal, and and whatnot, and while he leads a party which might be socially liberal but is economically right wing, Canada is ruled by very far right leaders in the province. Doug Ford in Ontario, Jason Kenney in Alberta, Francois Legault, I think that's his name, in Quebec, and it's just astonishing. And I wanted, what's your thoughts on that, and also the whole the Wexit movement that's happening in Alberta, the people in Alberta who want Alberta to be an independent country.
I think that the Wexit movement is a massive joke because really, quite frankly, we are on Indigenous land. And that's the thing at the end of the day. Land back is going to happen first. And then your Alberta Wexit fantasy is never going to happen. Because
hopefully never does happen, because we know what they want to do.
Okay, fine. There's obviously potential it could happen. But realistically, it shouldn't be happening. It just frankly should not, because we should be giving the land back to Indigenous nations first and decolonizing Canada. That should be what's happening. None of this Wexit nonsense. I get basically being economically alienated and frustrated, but it's directing your anger in the wrong way.
Exactly. I completely agree with you. And people who supported Trump, some of them had legitimate grievances. People who supported Brexit, and there were many lefties that supported Brexit in Britain. Yeah, they had legitimate grievances. Even people in Alberta and Western Canada have legitimate grievances. That said, voting for something as reactionary as Trump, or as reactionary as like Brexit, and supporting stupid things like deal or no deal, and we're going to leave the neoliberal EU and go to WTO rules. I mean, the World Trade Organization is neoliberalism on steroids, and it's the same thing with this ridiculous Wexit movement. And if you guys think that you're the ones that are alienated and that nobody listens to your grievances, as you mentioned, if anyone should be complaining about feeling alienated from the Canadian state and Canadian society, it's our Indigenous brothers and sisters and moms and elders.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if they. I don't know in terms of complaining about being alienated from Canadian society per se. I think they would want their land back and to have control of their own destiny more than basically frustration of being alienated from Canadian society, which was obviously imposed upon them. So
Exactly. And that's a perfect and that's a perfect segue. I mean, another issue I wanted to talk to you about is kind of going back to the raging xenophobia that's happening in Canada. I mean, is like don't the left the left aren't going to be the ones to stop this madness. Sadly, I wish they were, but it's just not going to happen for whatever reason. That's that these Canadian firsters don't seem to want to stop a ridiculous nuclear holocaust from breaking out. But are there any like rival Canadian oligarchs and their outlets in like the media saying to people, hey guys, time out. China is, China, we have lots of businesses in China. We do lots of trade with China. Uh, China doesn't really, meddle in our affairs, so we're not so interested in meddling in their affairs, and we use China for cheap labor. So you're going to you're actually going to hurt our bottom line if we have this new Cold War. So is there like anyone like in the in the Canadian ruling class that's trying to say to the liberals, the CP, the NDP, and so forth to like stop this ridiculous like new Cold War going on with China?
I don't really see it. It's kind of been a universal push for the Cold War. To
Oh
be brutally
Christ!
honest, like that's the I
Wow.
don't I haven't seen the mass movement per se to by the media to fight that off.
Jesus Christ.
Quite frankly,
But like not even like Canadian libertarians are like trying to say to their oligarchic friends, guys, this is completely ridiculous having a new Cold War with China. Do you really want like all of us to like die in like a nuclear holocaust? Like stop doing this. This is counterintuitive, counterproductive. Like it is like are the like Canadian Ron Pauls like like trying to make their voices heard to like stop this new Cold War with China.
I don't really know if there's like a Canadian Ron Paul or like I haven't really ever gotten a sense of a big libertarian presence really. Um,
Oh,
to be brutally honest, I
you
haven't gotten this.
Canadians are lucky in that respect.
Well, in some sense, I mean, at least I don't know if libertarians are good against war for the best reasons sometimes, but at
Exactly.
least they're against war. Like
Well, I mean, well,
some,
yeah,
some,
exactly.
yeah,
Well,
some.
exactly. I mean, like the problem with libertarians is the problem, like I have with lots of people on the left is that even when they're against, is that they're selectively anti-war. When it comes to Iraq, they'll be protesting against that. But when it comes to Libya, okay, for some reason, like the crowds are getting smaller. And then when it comes to Syria, like, oh my gosh, it was like like you had to go to the American Conservative magazine or read certain op-ed pieces at reason.com or go to the Ron Paul Institute for the Ron Paul Institute for Peace to actually like read critical pieces like saying like the war for Syria is an imperial project. I mean, much of the left completely threw Syrians under the bus in supporting uh, non-existent moderate rebels, and then the people who would speak out against Syria as an imperial project, like Min Press News, Ron Yakalik of Shadowproof and Soapbox, Max Blumenthal and his team at the Gray Zone were all viciously viciously smeared. And I mean, you want to talk about the real cancel culture.
Yeah,
They literally were canceled. They were not invited on the democracy nows of the world. And you see the same thing with with Venezuela, Ron Paul, who denigrates, socialism and, warns about, cultural Marxism, he was more anti-war, speaking out against the war for oil in Venezuela and describing what's going on in Venezuela as another Cuban Missile Crisis. Whereas when you would read, like, Jacobin or other, left-leaning outlets, they were all, like saying, okay, we don't want Trump to like overthrow Maduro, but we think Maduro is a communist dictator and he's like oppressing his people. So, yeah, we want sanctions, but we don't want sanctions to like hurt babies. And like, we're socialists, but we don't like Maduro. And we want like Nordic socialism in Venezuela and Nicaragua.
Oh, you know what? Actually, you know what? You reminded me of something I've wanted to write about for a while. Which is the social democracy is not socialism. It's annoyed me for so long. Seriously. Like, Bernie has done some great things. Bernie Sanders has done some great things, but one of the biggest points of damage he's done to the left is he's made so many people think they're radical socialists for being moderate social democrats.
Well,
like,
and
you ain't a socialist, fam. You're a communist, fam. You just ain't. You just ain't. Like, I mean, hop on the club. We'd be happy to have you, but like you ain't a socialist if you're a social democrat. If you're just pushing like reformism and if you're pushing just a bit more of a taxation of the rich, you're not a socialist.
Exactly. And then I also have, I remember when I had Jay Watts, the central organizer of the Communist Party of Canada, on the program, and I was so excited to have him on because one of the questions I love to ask people when we're talking about political philosophy and trying to find an alternative system to capitalism, one of the questions I asked Jay Watts was, what are the severe limitations of liberal democracy, and why is Canada not the model of liberal democracies countries should emulate? And Jay gave a pretty good response, as as a revolutionary socialist would. But then when we got into talking about social democracy and the Nordic model that Bernie keeps propping up, and other Sanders, Corbyn type of people, Jay was saying to me that that in the late 70s, the very countries that started to adapt market fundamentalism and Austrian economics and Milton Friedman's reactionary voodoo economics, junk economics, as Michael Hudson would say, were actually the Nordic countries, which gave fake Nobel prizes to Milton Friedman and Hayek and so forth. And on top of that, another thing I have to say is that yes, the Nordic country, the Scandinavian countries, there's a lot to admire of them about, but they're NATO socialists. They support NATO
socialists. I like that.
They support NATO, which means you support pan-European imperialism abroad. And on top of that, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, Norway, they were all founded as colonial states. They all stole the land from the Sami people, and they brutally subjugate the indigenous people of the Scandinavian countries, who are the Sami people, and also oppress Roma people and so forth. So so it bothers me when people keep propping up the Nordic models, especially when they have their own Geert Wilders, they have their own Marine Le Pens, they have their own Maxime Berniers in those countries, and the last several years they have been going more and more to the more and more to the right.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, one of the things I wrote about the Five Eyes Network and how recently they actually forced the cancellation of a Canada trying to winter training exercise, right?
Mhm.
And one of the interesting things that a lot of people don't know is that basically a lot of these Nordic countries, they aren't in the Five Eyes network, but there's a basically there. I think it's called like the 55 Eyes or whatever. Basically, so they're
Or
kind of
like
like on the
or like a
periphery.
kind of like a sensecom or something like that.
They're like a periphery. They're like a periphery of the intelligence and kind of spying. So I guess that's maybe the best way I would put it. Basically, like yeah, no, they're not really the models for an actual like left realistically.
And those supposedly peaceful loving Nordic countries. I mean I don't know which those countries did support the Iraq War or didn't support the Iraq War, or if they did what Canada did, which is you publicly say you're not for the Iraq War, but you work behind the scenes in colonizing Iraq. But all
Yeah,
of them.
actually, that's one of the funny things. I actually didn't know about that till like maybe a few months ago. I had no idea. I really did actually think we had managed to stay out of Iraq, but actually no, we basically had just kind of gone and did it on the backside. So
Exactly, just like the Vietnam War and so forth. But all of those Nordic countries, which Bernie keeps propping up, and his own cult followers, keep propping up about the Nordic models, is all of those countries unanimously supported the war for oil in Libya. They all unanimously supported overthrowing Assad and supporting non-existent moderate rebels and supporting Islamist front groups like the White Helmets, which is basically like your who's who of European states and Gulf states and North American and Australasian states supporting this Islamist front group, posing as like humanitarian workers when really they're actually like chopping people's heads off and like mocking people whose Western bombs they landed on and so forth. So and and the European Union all supported us. All support sanctions on Venezuela, and they gave like the right livelihood and like European Union peace awards to the Western backed oligarchs, that were instrumental in overthrowing Hugo Chavez briefly, and are still trying to overthrow Maduro, and all of them support it. All of them support the colonization of Haiti. So again, these NATO socialists, these pseudo leftists, these Western firsters. Yeah, I have no time for them. I have no time for them, and it really, really bothers me when people keep propping them up as like the good apples, or that these are people who America makes them do evil things. It's like, give me a break.
oh yeah, oh no, it's America. We'll be finding out. No, no, no. We were never good. I said on the stream I appeared on last night. I think it was Brave New North. Which I mean, if you want to go check out that chat about America, that's probably that's where I talked about that on length for a while. Um, yeah, yeah, no, basically.
Brave New North. Yeah, I'm gonna have to. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to
You know what?
check
You
that
know
out.
what? I just realized I have entirely lost my train of thought. Please just ask me the question again.
No problem. No problem. No problem. Well, another issue which is keeping me up at night is I'm curious what's going to what's going to happen with Bolivia, because they overthrew Evo Morales in that Western backed oil mining coup. His party, the MAS, is back into power. It was a stunning show of doing this to the
The
West.
Western imperialists, yeah. And I mean, the Western imperialists, like the U.S., were literally giving arms and weapons
Christian
to these
fundamentalists.
fascist paramilitaries, which I mean I wrote about in August, basically. So yeah, that was definitely one of the highlights of the year, really. So
but I'm worried that that the MAS. I mean, unless Evo still has huge influence over the party due to his popularity and due to his pretty good people power legacy, is as I'm wondering, like because obviously they don't have much control over their own deep state, because that's how Evo was very quickly ousted. Was that the military was just waiting for the right time to oust him. So I wonder if they're going, if the new leader of the MAS is going to do what Lenin Moreno, the traitor in Ecuador, is going to do, which is trying to like play nicey and footsie with the West in order to just like not be in order not to have like a repeat. And I think in the end of the day, Venezuela. Oh, sorry, my voice is like drying up. I think, but I think in the end of the day, if for Bolivia, Venezuela, and similar countries, if they don't want like to be under Western sanctions and so forth, they have to find an alternative economic system which isn't oil extraction, mining, which is not good for the planet and probably creates a lot of problems with their own indigenous people. But at the same time, it's sort of a damn you do. Like they kind of like need their own green new deal in order not to get sanctions. Like what happened with Venezuela with the petrodollar. So I'm curious. I'm just curious. Like how does the left outside of North America and Europe, how do they go forward and try to find a way that they're not constantly under the economic warfare of Canada and its allies?
Well, quite frankly, I think basically you look at China's Belt and Road Initiative, and I think quite frankly, China keeps becoming the hegemonic.
Hegemonic.
Yes, hegemonic. Oh man, yeah. No, if China keeps becoming the major power, basically, then I think, quite frankly, you'll have a situation where somewhat similar to how the Soviet Union was helping like countries such as like North Korea, basically, which is now isolated because Yeltsin is America's bitch. So, anyways, point being, basically, it's gonna be China. I think China is the big key. China keeps getting bigger, keeps getting more powerful. Then I think a lot of these countries are going to be in a lot better position. I think, quite frankly, the faster the American empire collapses, the better it's going to be for everyone. So.
Well, you say that, but the issue I have with actually that's actually a perfect segue, because we didn't get the chance to to sort of have a bit of a debate on China. Now I partially agree with you. I partly agree with you that I think one of the great things about China and Russia, and the fact that they have a huge, well, a partial influence over how the United Nations is run, because they have veto power. They're part of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, is that in Venezuela, the UN was this close to basically, normalizing the war for oil in Venezuela, but Russia and China stepped up and said, sorry, you guys can't do that. And because Russia and China have, they have their own alternative system to fake Western democracies, the Russians like to use the argument of sovereignty more. The Chinese also use the argument of sovereignty more. So China, even though China also does businesses with regimes, with countries which I don't like their human rights record and so forth. The Chinese, approach is that, hey, they don't meddle in our affairs, we don't meddle in their affairs. We're going to help out, with their infrastructure. situation, and whatever, and it doesn't matter who the government of the day is. We're not trying to overthrow countries left, right, and censor the way, and because that's the Canadian, and Anglo-American and the French business of affairs. So that's the one good thing I see about China's economic rise, and Russia still having a different interpretation of international law, which is like respecting people's sovereignty. I think the issue though I have with with the rise of China is that China also does lots of mining, lots of oil extraction, also engages in the very controversial thing of 5G. And so that's why going back to my previous question, like we really it's I think Venezuela, and this is also going to be useful for China and Russia, need to start trying to engage in kind of like their own version of of say a Green New Deal or a Leap Manifesto. What do you say to that?
In terms of, I think from what I've heard, China's putting a lot of investments into new renewable energy. Is from what I've heard. Russia, I'm not so sure, to be perfectly honest. I'm not 100% sure what the state of it there. They seem to be, they're struggling even just to get a pipeline through because the U.S. is trying to sanction their deal with Germany for the Nord Stream. So they're kind of under a really rough situation there already, but I'm not 100% sure admittedly. But I think China, at least I've heard, is putting a lot of money into renewables.
So there's some hope, you think?
No, I think there's some hope. It's we are not in a great situation at all, but I definitely don't think it's we're all dead yet.
Well, because the other problem is China and Russia have their nuclear weapons, but I think the only reason why they've not abolished their nuclear weapons and why they've not demilitarized and this goes back to what we were talking about, the whole issue of defunding the police. I would love to see a defunding of the military. I want to see all militaries abolished, put in the trash, unless it's purely for defensive reasons, like what France, Brits and Australia and Canada do. But the only reason why China still has their nuclear weapons, and the only reason why China has been, kind of building up its military, is because of the pivot to Asia. And just like what we see, with Ukraine and NATO expansion, yes, if you're going to be expanding NATO and you're going to be overthrowing, a pro-Russian backed oligarch in favor of a Western backed oligarch that wants that engages in anti-Russia hysteria, yeah, don't be surprised that people of Crimea want to join Russia, and that Russia is starting to mobilize its own military and is keeping its own nuclear weapons on red alert. So in conclusion, we need to really abolish imperialism, and if we want to avoid the coming climate crisis, it would be better if countries worked with each other, as equal partners and nation to nation, and we embraced Eve Engler's anti-imperialist argument, which is do no harm. Yeah.
Yeah. My concentration is just a bit off tonight. My gosh. No worries. Just hopefully the power of editing will save me here.
Well, hey, you're the editor-in-chief of the Canada Files, and so it must be very exhausting because you're dealing with a terrible state of affairs all the time. That by the time you're done editing everyone's articles and publishing them, you probably must be like, oh, fucking hell.
Yeah, no, it's not a bad way. It's not a bad way to put it. Yeah, no. Yeah, sure is interesting, yeah.
By the way, how many more years do you have in your because you are studying journalism and you're doing a bachelor's in journalism? How many more years do you have until until you graduate?
So I'm in second year right now, so it's gonna be I think 2.5 years. Now,
And
I
are you gonna go on and do like a master's in journalism and history, or are you gonna just like devote full time to the Canada files then?
I don't know. Hopefully I can financially build it enough to fully dedicate it to the Canada files.
To like work on it full time then.
That would be the hope, but I could also see like if I get lucky, maybe going with like a telesur or going with that kind of like network. Going, I could see myself going abroad potentially to honestly going abroad and working for someone like something like a telesur or who the hell knows, maybe CGTN, like something like that. Basically, RT. That might be my option intentionally early on while I build the Canada files. That's the kind of place where I would probably have the freedom to go after Canadian imperialism, but also slowly build up the Canada files.
Yeah,
Yeah, no.
because sort of long term financial wise, if you work for something like CGTN, Press TV, Telesur, or even or even in RT where there's a lot of left wing people who work there, or Sputnik News. I'm pretty sure like the financial rewards means that like you can use some of that money not only to make your own living, but also to put some of that money into the Canada files so that you can kind of like fully devote full attention to it, because even though you can do that right now, it's still it's still I would imagine is a monumental task when it comes to trying to get regular donations and all that, right?
Yeah, yeah, of course. It's definitely a delicate juggling act. Yeah, it's definitely one of the more interesting things. It's really tough in terms of the industry, in terms of positions. It's definitely not easy per se, especially on the left. Like if you're a corporate hack and basically you do a fair bit of writing when you're young, you'll basically hop right into a nice cushy position at whatever corporate media outlet you want to go with. But if you're basically going to be really going about and actually doing left journalism, it's a bit more interesting. But yeah, honestly, part of me is kind of like if I had a chance to just go straight into the industry right now or go into reporting, if I got like for me, for example, like if I got an offer from like a Telesur or a CGTN or a Press TV to say, hey, go be a reporter full time or be a commentator full time, I would probably just drop everything and go there, do that. Like that's the thing for me is basically I've definitely enjoyed the degree. I think I've benefited a ton from it. But I also think because I've done as much writing, as much stuff as I've done, I'm also kind of confident in that if I basically had to just go off the merits of what I have so far, I could actually handle myself in the industry. And also, I think it'd be a bit more fun for me because I find classes to be, I think we all agree, classes are a pain in the ass. And I find a lot of for me, like I know I want to be a journalist. Like I don't like half the time I don't really want to take the other classes that basically the program mandates you take. To me, it's kind of like a waste of time on a lot of these courses that I have to take, but you have to just take them because they're mandated or they're basically because like if I could just take like all journalism courses, I'd probably just take all journalism courses because maybe it's one of the rare things for me where like I absolutely know what I want to do. Like
Yeah.
there's absolutely no. I have fully committed myself to that. Basically, I am the
How old
amount of
are you
work I've
right
done.
now, actually?
I've set up everything I have to basically go into that. But there's a whole
How
thing of
how old are you right now, though?
19. So I'm 19.
Okay, well, I'm 30 years old, and I can tell you this. I dropped out of I dropped out of two colleges because the first one I studied at which was an English speaking university in Maastricht in Holland, because my father is Dutch, so it's much more affordable to go study in
Yeah.
Holland as opposed to North America and Australasia and Britain. But I didn't like the classes I was taking in Maastricht because and there was no like history program or journalism program, so I dropped out of that. Then I went to go study at at an English speaking college in Brussels called Vesalius, but I had to leave that because it was way too overpriced. I wasn't even doing like the full bachelor program. I was a part-time student, so I wasn't even going to get a degree out of it. So I had to drop out of that college after 2 years. I was studying international relations. I took a course in print journalism there, and I took some history courses and political philosophy courses, which I did like, but I couldn't enjoy the full program, and I wasn't living in Brussels. I was still living with my parents in Villers-le-Ville, so I dropped out of that college. Then went to another college in Holland, which was English speaking. I was hoping to transfer my credits there so I could study, history and journalism, and then later do like a master's in either history or journalism. But then that college wouldn't let me study there because I didn't have the right high school diploma. So it was like it was really like like fucking hell. So I dropped. So I've been out of university since then. I've been job hunting since then without without much luck, because even when you're trying to find jobs in journalism, it's like if you don't have like a degree in history or journalism, they don't even like look twice at it. I was lucky though that that I had contacted Glenn Ford of Black Agenda Reports, asked him if he was hiring people, if he was interested in hiring someone who wanted to do interviews, and by then the Labour Party conference was coming up in Brighton, and I offered my services. I offered my services, absolutely free to just like to voluntarily go do that and cover it. And Glenn Glenn responded back going, yeah, sure, no problem. Now my articles didn't get they didn't get published, which is a whole nother story for another day, which I'll talk to you off the air about. But that was my only break into journalism, and that was like the only time I felt like, okay, finally I can put that on my CV, and I can try to maybe that'll make job hunting much easier. But yeah, I remember telling you that I'm a really bad writer. And that was the great experience of being associated with Black Agenda Report, was that okay, I'm not a good writer, but I'm definitely like a good communicator, and I can definitely see myself being a reporter with like a camera and microphone and doing documentaries, or just like covering social upheavals or political events. And it was it was during my time at the Labour Party conference when I was trying to figure out what to do after things didn't, really work out at Black Agenda Report. I thought to myself, what should I do? And then I thought to myself, well, I interviewed Eve Angler and I interviewed Rick Sterling, and I was quite proud of those interviews. And other people were saying to me, Youri, why don't you just continue, doing, more interviews? And then that's when I came up with the idea of doing 1+1. And then luckily, with the people I met at the Labour Party conference, like, Jackie Walker, Chris Williamson, that's when I said to myself, okay, I'm going to contact these people. So I already have like some people, to do a YouTube SoundCloud show with. And then that's kind of how 1+1 got started, and then and then like having the confidence to just email as much people as possible and ask them if they were interested in coming on the program and talking about anything and everything, and then luckily with Dimitri Lascaris, Eve, Margaret Kimberly of Black Agenda Reports and people like that. That was how 1+1 got started, and I think I'm more or less gonna probably stick to that. But I would love to the Canada Files. I mean, if you guys want to use anything of 1+1, especially because I talk a lot about imperialism, and I have the All Things Canada edition, which you were part of that. So if you guys ever want to just use any of that for your Canadian audience and your international audience, feel free to feel free to do that.
All right. Yeah, that's good. That's good. So, yeah. So I mean, I'm kind of curious. Basically, in terms of like the 1+1, basically. It's like I guess is the 1+1, is that like your main focus there? Like, what's kind of your ambition journalism wise? I'm just curious.
Oh, well, I still need to do a website. I've been dragging my feet and procrastinating so much in just doing a website where people, and then having like a thing where people can donate through PayPal or whatever or whatever is their bank card of choice. I've really been meaning on doing that website for a long time, but it's just once you're done with the interviews, uploading it on YouTube and trying to post it on several different places on Facebook, by the end of the day, you're so exhausted from doing all that you're not in the mood to start up a website where you have to upload things. No, but I think, but hopefully, in the coming months, once I give myself the time, I would like to, do a website of 1+1 where I put the interviews there, comment sections if people want to, interact. But I would love to, but I would love to move either to the UK, the US, but one of the more smaller states like Vermont, or yours truly, Canada. I actually would love to move to Canada and be involved in the the people power movements there, and I've gone along so great with my Canadian guests, such as yourself, that and a lot of my audiences actually are Canadians, and so so yeah, so part of me, yeah, so no, not part of me, I actually would like to move to Canada in the future, visit some of the provinces and see which place would be a good fit for me, and because that would probably make because that would also make being a correspondent say if the Canada Files wanted to hire me and wanted me to go cover the Green Party convention, go cover this NDP convention, go meet with this go meet with the NDP Socialist Caucus, and have a debate with them about about the current leadership and whatnot. I would love to do stuff like that with a camera, an iPhone, record it. But at the moment, I'm unfortunately in the worst country to be stuck in, which is Belgium, and I just can't logistically
Is it wait, why is it the worst country? Is it just COVID cases, lockdown? Is it just cold as hell?
Well, I think Aidan, the problem with the European left, if that even exists, people say in passing our pathetic excuse of a left in America, or our pathetic excuse of a left in Canada or Britain. Well, the pathetic excuse of the larger European left in both Western and Eastern Europe, they're not too focused on imperialism and stuff like that, because for them it's America that controls the world, it's the Brits that control most of the world. They're not involved in any harm doing, and if they are involved, it's only because America makes them. And much of the energy and focus is on two institutions, which is the EU and NATO. And many people just much of the left and the pseudo-left, they just go and join the European Union and get involved in different EU NGO projects, and if they make a comfortable living, they're fine doing that. But it's not a real people power movement like what you're what you see in Canada with all of the indigenous anti-colonial struggles, the Black Lives Matter, or what you and Eve are doing with trying to build a proper anti-imperialist movement. You don't have that in Europe. And then the other thing is even if it does exist in Europe, I don't speak French or Dutch to engage with those probably like-minded people, but because of the language barriers which exist throughout Europe, unless you're in Ireland or England or Scotland and Wales, it's just not like the place for an anglophone like me to be in, which is why I would love to I mean, I don't know if I would want to move to Ireland, but if I had the chance to move to Ireland, I would go there. If I had the chance to move to Wales, I would go there. If I had an okay job or I was in a relationship with somebody in England, it could even be the worst part of England to live in, I would go there. But I have kind of so that's why long term wise, if I wasn't financially dependent on my parents, I would love to just move to Canada, someplace like Vermont or Wales and actually and then start properly engaging with the people power movements there or whatever journalism outlets is there or can be built there. So it's a bit of a so it's lots of obstacles in the way for the time being.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally understand. It's obviously it's a similar issue for me. Really, it's just I mean I guess I'm in a bit of a better position because I've started the outlet and at least it is beginning to get some support there.
Yeah.
It's slow. It's definitely slow. And admittedly, the way I see it is if the Canadian anti-imperialist left really wants to gain traction, look, it's a thing that would benefit me, admittedly, and it would benefit. But at the same time, basically, you got to invest in outlets. You got to invest in media apparatus. Basically, if these stories aren't being reported on, basically, it's tougher to do activism based on that. So basically, I think basically, and yet again, it would be in my benefit. But I think basically, if the left wants to get moving forward and really build up, they need to be aggressively building a media apparatus. Back when I was kind of more of a soc dem, I had kind of mused talking to the NDP, trying to reach the NDP and basically you guys need a media apparatus. Basically you guys need something like that. You need something
Exactly.
where it's relatively connected. I mean, even Jacobin is kind of, in this case, it's quite connected to the DSA. Basically, a lot of its founders and figures are in the DSA and it's kind of supported there through the by the DSA. So, I think basically if the social movements, I think you look at Cowichan News, right, in Bolivia, that was doing so much of the coverage. Oliver Arias was there doing that. Basically, Cowichan News was supported by the social movements. It was supported by them, and that's part of that was one of the few places that got coverage, got consistent coverage, good coverage, in-depth coverage. And so I think that's one of the biggest things. I think is that and maybe this is another article for me, but it's it's basically the left really does in social movements, the genuine socialists and communists, admittedly, because maybe some social democrats I think would want to support it, but I think some stuff might piss off a fair few of them, but at least the communist socialists I think really should be investing in media and media personalities more, basically, because
well,
obviously people are kind of screwed financially because of COVID, basically. Exactly. So I'm not going to say how dare you not donate to me. But even
if COVID didn't exist, even if COVID didn't exist, income inequality is getting worse and worse, and worse. And the more that gets worse and worse and worse, the more people aren't going to be so generous with their money, or they're only going to say okay, I'm just going to invest in Mid-Press News' Patreon, Consortium News' Patreon, and maybe I'll invest in the Canada Files. The more the income inequality gets worse and worse and worse. Ironically, because independent news has to cover, the terrible state of affairs, but the more like income inequality gets worse, the more it actually damages, social movements. But as Ralph Nader, as Ralph Nader always says, breaking through power, it's easier than you think. And one of the reasons why why I love the Canada Files so much and why I'm so inspired by the work you've been doing at the Canada Files is, I remember the first question I asked you was like, what inspired you to start to start the Canada Files, and you were saying, well, nobody else is doing it. No other left wing outlet was covering was covering Canadian imperialism, or certainly didn't have the right critical perspective needed to do it. So it's just like, yeah, I'm going to start my own outlets, and it's been great to see the brilliant Arnold August be part of it. Eve Angler, who's my most frequent guest on 1+1. It's been great to see him given like a proper platform, as opposed to just the occasional article written in Canadian Dimension or something like that. And I think that should be an inspiration to other people. And sometimes it's it's difficult because we all wish that we had a like-minded person to start these independent these media projects with, or these organizations with. And when you're kind of alone doing it, and it's kind of like a one-man show, it's very hard to find that motivation. But at some point, you just have to kind of make that leap of faith and just pray that everything goes well. But the thing I'm struggling with right now is not so much the motivation or anything like that. That's I love doing 1+1. I was even going through withdrawal symptoms, because I was gonna start doing interviews in February, but it was but I was thinking no, I really need to start doing interviews again, because I love talking with with you and both past and new guests so much. No, but I think the issue I have is just is building an audience, because my audience is quite small. 1+1 is very criminally underrated, just like a lot of Canadian outlets such as yourself are also very, very underrated, and it's trying to build that audience. That's the only kind of current struggle I'm going through with with this outlet.
Yeah, no, that's definitely it's definitely fair. And yeah, your point about income inequality is obviously 100% fair. Basically, because there obviously isn't a ton of money to go around. So it's a very difficult one. Obviously, basically, you can't give money that ain't there. It's just a tough one. It's just a tough one, because at the end of the day, right, basically, to actually have this happen, because here's the thing, right, for me, basically the next few years, I can reasonably be able to do this, pretty comfortably. Part-time job or something like that, full-time job during the summer, basically do school for the next few years. And I mean, basically, the good case scenario is gonna be that I potentially could go to a telesur, or like I said before, press TV or something like that. But I think part of the problem and part of my concern is that's not going to be available for everyone. To me, I think the only reason why I even have a chance of that, at least in my opinion, of course, is that I've just done 70, 75 articles already. A year and a half into my degree, I've already done 8 video reports. I've done dozens of podcast episodes. And I run an outlet full time, basically.
Could you see the Canada Files starting its own YouTube page?
We do have YouTube. It's just not used a ton. It's just not used a ton.
Yeah.
During February, back in the days before pandemic, RIP that life. Basically, I went and covered a whole bunch of rallies. Basically, Oh God, I just checked my YouTube channel. I just realized I forgot to delete one of my live streams. I was checking out the YouTube function. I didn't delete it. Oh no. 18 people have seen that. Oh no. This is an all-time moment. This for like your if you're serious, it's just the creator just panicking in real
Well,
time.
because because I think in Canada, for example, I think it would be great if the Canada files I mean, of course, again, it's always easier said than done, because once you're editing a bunch of articles and publishing a bunch of articles, and you're doing a podcast, which is already time consuming, in itself, you don't want to then go, oh, we have to do a YouTube, we need to do like a YouTube event. Although YouTube has like a very, very big audience, so if you do like
Yeah.
the occasional special live stream of a Q&A, or like a guest, like like a it could be Arnold, it could be Eve, Bianca Mugani, or Barry Weisletter or Jay Watts, and someone of the Canadian Communist Party. If you do sort of like kind of like those kind of like like live streams, that's that could be very beneficial of itself, because that could definitely like snowball into the Canada Files having Canada Files already has a huge presence on the very, very small left-wing media outlets that exist in Canada, but I think it can only get any better. But
Yeah, you know what? You've
the
reminded me of something.
yeah,
This chat has been really good to kind of like spark my mind actually a bit, because I was genuinely kind of like the chat came at a great time because my mind was not in the mood to do anything. But one of the things I remembered wanting to do actually was actually do kind of like Christo Aveli style YouTube videos on like Canadian politics and like basically Canadian like imperialism, like doing those kind of Christo Aveli style videos like on YouTube, which would maybe take like an hour or two to do, not too long, but to edit and all that. But I think basically that kind of thing might be something useful. It's just a question of like timing for me, because I would love to do
exactly.
something like that, because I think basically if I like put a concerted effort, especially with the platform I already have, basically I think that could be grown fairly fast. There's a question of whether I would do that on I think I would probably do that on the Canada Files YouTube, likely. I actually, funny enough, I do have an old YouTube channel, AJ8FC. So maybe, just maybe, I do that. You see, these are like you're getting me thinking live time, which is because part of me wants to do it on my old FIFA YouTube channel, which is funny enough. If people want to go have a laugh at some of the old stuff I used to do. Basically, I ran a FIFA YouTube channel for like 2 years during high school. It's called AJ8FC. Um, but maybe I do those videos there. Do I do those videos for the Canada Files? Like, I mean, I would potentially lean towards doing it on the Canada Files, because I've always like my mindset has always been like institutional. Like I think the biggest problem on the left of a lot of it is actually lack of institution building.
Hmm.
Is kind of like individualistic thinking. Like I've even found within like the left media ecosphere, there's a lot of inward thinking and kind of
Yeah.
sectarianism. Not even ideological sectarianism, just simple like sectarianism within like the different
Well,
like
you, well, you, well, you,
states
well,
of the
you,
media.
you,
So.
you, well, you were saying to me that I remember when I was asking you why is there such a tiny, tiny, almost barely non-existent anti-war movement, anti-imperialist movement in Canada, and you were saying to me, you were saying to me, that's a good question. I think one of the reasons is because the left in Canada is way too tied to the NDP, who
Oh
supports.
yeah, that's the biggest thing. Like I mean, to be honest, like that's one of the things where I was caught up in that too, basically. For until like maybe like September, then I had my month of like denial, which was basically, i.e., going into the Green Party leadership race and just hoping maybe, just maybe, like the center left or like left-ish kind of people could maybe be redeemed, and then I still remember that one foreign policy debate where I was like, fuck this. I was like, fuck this. Oh my God, they're all terrible. It's like, wow, all of them are terrible. Even the one that's not great is still kind of pushing the Cold War logic, just is being like, not be as aggressive, guys. Let's not get into this. Like, but still accepting the core logic. And I was like, ah, shit, this NDP Greens, Social Democrats, they can't be safe, can they?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was rewatching I was rewatching my interview the other the other day when I was because sometimes I watch my my interviews to see if like if I can get inspiration, is there any questions I need to start coming up with again, and also try to learn from some of like my past mistakes when it comes to approaching questions and stuff like that. And I was rewatching my interview with Barry Weisletter of Socialist Action Canada and the NDP Socialist Caucus, and I really like the NDP Socialist Caucus and the and what Socialist Action Canada is trying to do. I think the people there are fantastic. I interviewed Daniel Terade, and we got into a great conversation about mental health care and why it needs to be merged in a single payer system. So yeah, there are phenomenally great people on on the NDP. There's certainly there certainly is a very good base of people who want the NDP to be a proper socialist party, eco-socialist party at home, and anti-imperialist party abroad. But it was funny, because because when I was interviewing Barry, we were talking about all of the NDP leaders, and I said to him, when he was asking, for some questions in in advance, I was saying to him, okay, let's just talk about the their record on the domestic front, because foreign policy, I have Eve Angler for that, and I know that the NZP's never been good on foreign policy. But Barry's, he was explaining to me, the mixed bag and some of the betrayals and the downsides of all these NDP leaders, which of course leads to the big $1 million Canadian question, well, Barry, since this party is so is such a Western chauvinist party, which doesn't even, deliver the goods for its own people. Isn't it, why not, you and your people, go, join the Socialist Equality Party or the Canadian Communist Party or the Green Party, and try to do what Dmitry Lascaris and Miriam Haddad did. But he was, very, but he wasn't interested in that. He is an NDP activist, and he was saying to me
What
that
was
like
his logic there? I'm actually kind of curious. What was what I've been curious is, for me, like, once I like went into the party, I went part of the party, I tried to engage with it. I was involved in the election campaign. I was in a writing association. I tried to work within the party, and like once I tried to work within the party for a short period of time, I saw that I was getting nowhere. Basically, I had looked at the past history of getting nowhere, and then I kind of wonder, someone that's worked for so long within the party and has consistently kind of not changed a ton. Like, what's the motivation for keep going there? Like, I'm kind of
well,
curious what his logic is there.
Barry, his argument, and I even talked about this with his, with his colleague off the air before we started recording our interview. I think Barry's point of view is that the NDP, the NDP institutionally has always been part of the labor movement. Yes, the NDP is probably not as revolutionary as we would, as he would like it to be, not as anti-war as he would like it to be, but that it's always had its ties to the labor movement from the CCF and onwards. So because the NDP has already the institutions and the body politic to make change, better to flood the NZP with the people power movement and try to change it or pivot it or make it into the political party, which if he was the leader, he would be perfect. So I think that was sort of like his logic, and then of course he was saying to me that that the SCP he feels they have too much baggage, and that the Canadian Communist Party he didn't say this, but this is probably yes, that would basically be like his line of thinking. Now, for me, my opinion is this. I think if the if the Soviet Union did engage in some of the human rights abuses it did, if the Chinese Communist Party did engage in some of the human rights abuses it did, or other self-described communist governments, I'm pretty sure many people on the left would flock to the Canadian Communist Party. Because if you look at the Canadian Communist Party, and if you talk with some of their members, I know for a fact you know this perfectly, since since those are the people you engage with, and I've interviewed Jay Watts, the central organizer of the Canadian Communist Party, and if you look at a lot of the campaigns the Canadian Communists is part of, there is not really much to dislike about them. They're socially liberal. They're revolutionary socialists at home. They're very anti-colonial, way more anti-colonial than than the Greens and the NTP put together under their awful leaderships of Jagmeet Singh and Annamie Paul and previously Elizabeth May. The problem is due to the anti-communist fundamentalist world we're living in, people just don't even want to take the the Communist Party of Canada seriously, even though if they were to engage with any of their members, they would be like, wow, you guys want to have like a mental health care, you guys want to merge mental health care with single payer, wow, you guys actually believe in the constituent assembly for Indigenous people, and believe that Quebec does have its right to independence as long as it's Anyways, I think unfortunately because communism has been such a damaged brand due to the Cold War, the communist witch hunts of McCarthyism and the legacy of Reagan and Thatcher, and even social democrats who also paint communists as the bad apples and the black sheep. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I think it's quite sad, because I personally think that Canadian politics, certainly in Parliament, would be much better off if there was more members of the CPC in power. But unfortunately, the the anti-communist fundamentalism, it's even penetrated much of the left, where you have people who say, I'm a lefty, but I'm not like those communists, and I'm for democratic socialism because communism is tyrannical socialism and stuff like that, and like we're for human rights, whereas we don't want to end up like North Korea. And I think because of that kind of messaging, it's almost as if like the damage is irreversible, even though the CPC are as much democratic socialist as as the NDP or a green person like
Wait, what do you mean by as much democratic socialist? I feel like that maybe needs to be fleshed out a bit.
Because Jay was explaining to me, the central organizer of the Communist Party of Canada.
Yeah, of course. I'm not doubting it. I just need you to flesh it out a little bit more.
No, because I remember Jay was saying to me that at the party conventions, like when the party members meet to pass what's going to be in their manifesto, what's going to be their
no, like the party.
He was saying to me that it's more democratic there than when you actually go to an NDP convention.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, okay, that makes no, actually, it's totally a fair point, actually, and I think one of the historically underrated things that people don't understand about like historical communist societies is actually they are some of the most democratic societies in like human history, quite frankly. Because like the whole idea of like the dictatorship of the proletariat, right, is that it's working people that control it. So it's extremely democratic. All the decisions are controlled by people. Basically, you think of it like this way, right? Instead of basically you have voting for people that it doesn't matter who you vote for. Basically, you get to vote on the direct issues that impact your life. Basically, it's not like you vote for a person and then there's the big businesses, the big financial influences that end up really shaping society. They're the ones that actually shape society. In like under communism and under like a dictatorship of the proletariat, as Jay Watts has probably said, he's probably one of the best speakers on it as a central organizer of the party. It really is a democratic system. It's giving people actual control of their lives. So it is actually probably it's the most democratic system out there at the end of the day, because basically, if you think about it, having capital and having big business have control of your life, that's not democratic. You can call an apple an orange. Basically, you can call an apple an orange. It ain't a fucking orange. It's an apple. It's like you can call something a democracy, and then basically have the vast majority of decisions not be made by people. It still doesn't mean it's truly a democracy. It's not really. Like at the end of the day.
And social democrats who are basic, as Chris Marsden of the Socialist Equality Party of Britain told me, when I was saying to him, why do Trotskyists like himself receive such hostility from people on the left, because you guys are critical of Stalin. You guys have spoken out against against Mao. So why do you guys still receive hostility? And he was saying to me, Youri, it's because those people on the respectable left, as you called them, they're the capitalist left. Which is kind of an oxymoron in its term, but that's what social democracy is. It's
basically it really is.
Your logic of thinking is that you think that the profit system, which is central for capitalism and corporatism, can be reformed. So in the end of the day, as long as people work hard, they'll get their pensions. As long as people work hard and pay their taxes, they're going to get their single payer healthcare and stuff like that. But in the end of the day, liberal democracies and social democracies which operate in a liberal democracy, and a liberal democracy in which the free market is a central element of it, in the end of the day, the plutocrats are going to win in the end because they control everything. The 1%ers are going to win in the end, which is why by the time the Thatcher, Reagan, Bob Hawke, Brian Mulroney revolution happened, was because it goes to show you how inadequate a liberal democracy is. Because at some point in time, the 1%ers and the plutocrats and the oligarchs are not going to like having to take care of of the workers and so forth, and they're just trying to find that one time it takes where they go, okay, we need to rip this social contract, and we need to give tax cuts to the rich, and we need to deregulate the economy, and we have to clamp down on workers' rights, and we have to keep expanding the free market wherever it goes, and on, imperialism and and all that jazz.
Yeah.
So and it's just astonishing how what the World Socialist website calls the pseudo-left, what Black Agenda Report calls the Black misleadership class, and we have a queer misleadership class, we got an indigenous misleadership class. It's just amazing how we have so many enemies from within the people power movements who play a very critical role in conserving the very system which they claim that they're trying to push back against. Yeah. It's just like astonishing in that respect. Yeah, but it just means that we have we haven't yeah, what can I say? We have our work cut. We have our work cut. Cut out for us, and that's why Canada Fouls is so crucial because I know because other outlets may call out the NCP, but I know you guys are going to be way more. You guys already are way more uncompromising in your criticisms of the NCP, the Greens and so forth, and again, Eve Engler, who's a contributor to the Canada Files, his book, everybody has to read his book, left, right, marching to the beats of imperial Canada, because we basically have to we basically have to, the struggle is it's a two-front battle. We have to fight the oligarchs, but we also have to fight, the Western firsters on the left and the social imperialists, and it's not easy, but it's a battle that needs to happen. Otherwise, the injustice continues.
Yeah, for sure, 100% for sure. Basically, unless you take a look at the kind of figures in the. I love the misleadership phrase. Because I think the NDP is kind of what provides. It is the misleadership, really. You'll have figures like, for example, Matthew Green or like Nikki Ashton or Leah Kazan. We're decent, and I think have good anti-imperialist politics. But you get swallowed up by the machine, man. That's how it works. Basically, these kind of figures are some of them are allowed to survive in the party, to kind of keep people in the party and keep them from going away to a genuinely like revolutionary alternative, and so I just basically that's kind of my thoughts on it there.
Would you also include the Greens in that, even though Dimitri Lascaris consistently got second place through the ranked choice voting?
Yeah, well, I think at the end of the day, though, like, one of the things you have to recognize, I think, is that basically at the end of the day, Lascaris, the sense I've always got is he is like a social democrat. At the end of the day, basically, that's the thing. At the end of the day, is that social democracy, like social democrats, aren't the answer to societal problems. At the end of the day, they can play a part, sure, in the solutions, but they aren't the answer. Basically, retaining capitalism in any shape or form, retaining capitalism basically is not the answer to societal problems in our societal crisis, quite frankly. So while I think he's doing great work, I think under a party under his leadership, it would definitely improve the consciousness, political consciousness.
It would be a welcome change, and like
yes, it would definitely be something like a good political consciousness. And I think it also, like a Green Party under his leadership would be a good ally to some social movements and to a certain degree. So I definitely think it would be a positive if he goes and wins there. I just don't think Social Democrats will take us all the way to kind of freedom from capitalism. That's kind of the extent of my thoughts there. So
yeah. Well, I mean, Barry Weisletter, when I was saying to him, why don't you and your wonderful comrades, colleagues, and workers movement, why don't you guys join the Green Party? Because look, Dimitri Lascaris, he's eco-socialist at home, he's anti-imperialism abroad, but Barry was saying to me that that the problem with with the Green Party is the Green Party doesn't engage with with the worker movements, with the unions, as much as the NCP, which already has its partnership with the unions. But his main beef was that the Canadian Greens are for green capitalism, and he was saying to me that yes, it was very inspiring, Dimitri Lascaris and Miriam Haddad's campaign. Yes, Dimitri, yes, he didn't win. But he consistently got second place. So who knows? Maybe second, third time charm. will do the trick. But he was saying to me that that the Green Party now under enemy Paul is already working to change the rules to make it more difficult for a Dimitri Lascaris Miriam Haddad to try to pull off a political earthquake. And and he was saying to me, and so that was one of Barry's reasons why he still thinks that the NDP is a better avenue for social change as opposed to the GPC, which
Yeah, I think basically, look, if you're gonna, I just don't think either party is worth kind of running through. Like, look, if you're a social democrat and you don't like communism, then I mean, okay, like just go work with it, try to bring it better. But like, I just don't think the social democratic parties, just from my own experience, really, are. If you're actually I think social democracy, so being a social democrat and being an anti-imperialist, if you are like really, really serious about being an anti-imperialist, really serious about it, you're eventually going to come to conflict with the ideology of social democracy and anti-imperialism. Like those two can coexist to a certain degree, but like I think a prime example for this is like the toleration of like basically MPs who are pro-Palestine. They're really pro-Palestine. They're against Israeli apartheid, but they won't rip into Randall Garrison, who's pushing the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism on Twitter and Facebook. He's part of a committee trying to force that through.
And this guy says that he's worried about climate change, but he supports he supports fucking fighter jets, and you can't be an environmentalist.
Yeah, he supports fighter jets. He supports the IDF.
And support
carbon-inducing
like, fighter jets.
He supports war at the end of the day, right? So.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a core thing, right? Basically, is I think like it's great and all. It's great that you have the position. Some of them have decent positions, but like, and I think kind of me and Matthew Green kind of came to conflict around this point, where basically I had added him, basically asked like hey, like, do you have any thoughts on this? Like, what about Garrison here? Like, you're really pro-Palestine. He's literally pushing the exact kind of definition that would get you censored on social media. Like, that's the ironic thing for me was basically like, if basically Matthew Green, for example, like let's say for example he doesn't push Garrison, and Garrison managed to get that definition passed around the world and Canada, right? Garrison is part of like that coalition to get that passed. And he gets censored, then it's basically like, well, there we go. Like basically, you got to speak out while you have the chance. You got to speak out before basically the imperialism or the McCarthyism kind of happens. So that's my frustration with social democrats really, is because it's like they're not that far. Some of them are not that far away from getting it, but at the end of the day, like that propaganda barrier around a lot of certain countries, and obviously I know we don't fully agree about China, but even to like a basic barrier of things we can both agree on about China, basically even getting to that point, right, is passing a huge propaganda barrier. Basically, even to get there, basically, and so it takes time, it takes work, but I think eventually a lot of like basically if you're serious about anti-imperialism, I think eventually you find social democracy or social democrats. Being a social democrat, you can't have social democracy and anti-imperialism really coexist over the long term.
Exactly. Real democracy is basically, socialism because it's everybody having the right to housing, food, social security, and not even tolerating, the existence of, homelessness, one of the biggest crimes against humanity, and even countries that have a history of social democratic parties have seen homelessness or people abused in in welfare states and stuff like that. It's a difficult one. I think like in the U.S. for example, I definitely think that people need to stop voting for the Democratic Party and vote for the Green Party, Party for Socialism and Liberation, the Socialist Equality Party, Socialist Alternative. Like I think like that needs to happen in the U.S. Like on mass. The working class and people of all marginalized groups need to stop voting for the Democratic Party. I think the Labour Party in Britain and Australia and New Zealand needs to be abolished. People need to stop voting for them because they're not even center left. They're just right wing. And under Jeremy Corbyn's leadership, he's proved that the party, even under a leader like him, is incapable of being a proper socialist revolutionary party at home, anti-imperialist party abroad across the spectrum. And even if even if Corbyn had one, he would have been only selectively anti-war, not anti-imperialist across the belt. So in the UK, I wish that people would just vote for the Socialist Equality Party because they're a proper anti-imperialist left-wing party. Canada's is a different barrel of fish because on the one hand, like if I was a voter and I had a Leah Gazan or a Nikki Ashton type of person, like my choices would be, okay, do I either vote for that NDP person who I could try to push to be more anti-war, or do I vote for a Dimitri Lascaris type person of the Green Party, or do I just go, well, both of those parties are led by people who are fake socialists and are diet liberals and are imperialists. So do I then just vote for either the SCP or the Communist Party? So like that, like Canada, that's where Canada, that's where I find myself kind of like scratching my my head as to what to do because the situation is very dire in Canada. So if Canada had I don't think proportional representation would help, but that's kind of a low-hanging fruit. I think if there was a ranked choice style of system that existed along with proportional representation, I would find it much easier to vote for whichever flavor of left that would be in whatever riding I'm in. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, for me, obviously being that I'll soon be officially part of the YCL, the Young Communist League, I think I have no doubt what I would do, obviously, but no, it's obviously it's until you've made the definitive choice, it's tough because the appeal of just trying to work with what you already have is much easier than just saying, you know what, this isn't going to work and we're going to have to embrace a long-term project to change things genuinely. So I totally get that that's basically a difficult choice. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think a lot of these institutions, a lot of the parties are just inherently kind of rotten, and you have to just embrace the real deal. So.
Well, yeah, because I mean, because going back to what I was saying, the NDP Socialist Caucus, Socialist Action Canada, their arguments of working within the NDP and trying to change it from within, or pivoting it to be the left-wing party we wish the NDP would be, it's very persuasive. It's very persuasive, which is why there's times I think to myself, if I was in Canada, do I join the NDP Socialist Caucus and try to change the NDP, or just try to do what Dimitri and Miriam Haddad are doing with the Green Party? Problem is I'm not. The problem is I find that both the end, it's rotten from the top. It's the Greens under Annamie Paul and Elizabeth May, the NDP under Jagmeet Singh and all other previous NDP leaders. like I don't know. I don't know if I would be able to survive and have the patience of trying to change, party from within when, climate change is getting worse, worse and worse, and I just would not, a part of me just would not feel comfortable, having to get behind, party leaders and then, like rationalizing why they suck, and then so yeah, and again, when I interviewed, that's but it seems to me as if the Socialist Equality Party isn't making that much of an impact in Canada, and the CPC, the Communist Party of Canada, hey, Jay Watts had me sold on possibly maybe not being a party member, but if he had a really good candidate in in whatever hypothetical writing, I would probably strongly consider voting for him or her. Yeah, it's a mess, Canadian politics.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I'm curious, how if the white Obama, Justin Trudeau, what more tricks that smiling con artist has up, has up his sleeve. I don't,
You know what, Yuri? I think it's been like 2.5 hours at this point.
Oh my
I
gosh,
think,
yes, it has.
to be honest, actually my butt's kind of starting to hurt
The
from
Joe
sitting
Rogan
down.
experience.
So so I think we've gone for like two hours at least. So I think we've gone on for a good amount.
All right. Actually, wait. 1 second. Let me do this. All right. We were joined on this edition of 1+1. This special, the special Youri Rogan experience with Aidan Jonah. We will see you guys. We will
Wait,
see.
sorry. I think you're gonna need to do that outro